Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, February the 22nd, and welcome to our video commentary. Well, today we're going to remember something that happened on this day in 1980, or 39 years ago today. Of course, February the 22nd is George Washington's birthday. He was born in 1732, and there are many celebrations in the country today to remember the birth of the great first president, George Washington. But on this day in 1980, we celebrated something else. We also celebrated George Washington, but we had something else to celebrate. And that was his amazing hockey game, the Olympic hockey game between the old USSR and a bunch of young college kids who were playing as Team USA. Some of you may remember that back in those days, the Soviet Union had great hockey teams, but because we couldn't play professionals in the Olympics, then they would usually play a young college team from the United States or maybe from Canada. So it was a mismatch, to say the least. It was always a mismatch, and the teams from the USSR and some of the Soviet East Germany and so on would always have great teams, and they would usually win the gold in many of these Olympics. But in 1980, it was not that way. In 1980, this young American team put up quite an Olympic challenge, and on this day in 1980, they beat the Soviet Union 4-3. And if you have not seen this game, I would encourage you to do it. If you have not heard Al Michael call the last minute or minute and a half of the game, I would encourage you to go to YouTube and listen to it. It's just absolutely emotional and dramatic. I mean, you're talking about an upset when a bunch of young college kids from American universities defeat the number one hockey team in the world, at least amateur, from the USSR. I mean, it was a mismatch, and yet these kids rose up to the challenge and beat the USSR. And then eventually they had to win the next game to win the gold. But this was, I'm sure, for most of us, the biggest hockey game ever. You have to go back to February 1980 also and put yourself in the place of what was happening back then to understand what a great moment this was. It was a very tough time in February of 1980. You had the American hostages in Iran. They had been taken, the embassy had been taken over a couple of months before. The Soviets had just invaded Afghanistan. You had Cuban troops running all over Africa, being paid for, of course, by the Soviet Union. You had the communist threat down in Nicaragua. It was a very tough time. And then on top of that, you had an economic malaise, if I could put it that way, back here, gasoline lines, inflation. It was just a very tough time for the United States. And for a couple of hours that Friday, February the 22nd, we were able to take our minds off all of that and watch what, at least in my mind, it was the greatest hockey game that I've ever seen. These young American collegiate kids defeating the powerful USSR. So the miracle on ice is how we remember this game. And frankly, it probably was a miracle to have these young kids defeat the USSR. So if you have a chance, watch the game. I think it's available on the internet. But if you don't get to watch the whole game, watch that last minute and a half of Al Michaels of ABC calling that game. I think you will find it as emotional today as we did back in 1980. Thank you for watching. We have all of these on YouTube, we have them on Twitter, and we have them on my blog. And if today is your birthday, well, number one, you share your birthday with George Washington. But if today is your birthday, happy birthday. Bye-bye, everybody.